Choctaw tribe history. The Choctaw are known for their advanced farming, intricate basketry, unique rituals, strong complex social structure, and resilience. The Choctaw are a major Native American people closely related to the Chickasaw. From the southwestern woodlands, the Choctaw and other ancestors have called the region home for centuries. There are three eras in which the Choctaw are known to have existed. The Paleo-Indian stage, 18,000 to 8,000 BC. The Archaic stage, 8,000 to 1,000 BC. And prehistory, 1000 BC to 1540 AD. Prehistory is defined as the time prior to sustained European contact. The first mention of the Choctaw name in modern history was recorded in 1675 by a Spanish priest in Florida. He warned early settlers against traveling too far to the west, lest they meet the fearsome Choctaw. This name is still what the Choctaw call themselves today. The Choctaw language, Choctaw Anumpa, belongs to the Muskogean family. It remains a living language with active revitalization programs in both Oklahoma and Mississippi. Today, there are three federally recognized tribes. The Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, the third largest tribe in the United States, headquartered in Durant, Oklahoma. Its reservation covers roughly 10,864 square miles. The Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians, descendants of those who remained in their ancestral homeland after the forced removals of the 1830s. They are the only federally recognized tribe in Mississippi. The Jenna Band of Choctaw Indians in Louisiana. Located in Jenna, Louisiana, this tribe received federal recognition in 1995. Their land was mainly in today's Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and parts of Georgia and Florida. The Choctaw were the first tribe forcibly removed from their ancestral lands to Indian Territory by the United States government during the Trail of Tears in the 1830s. Many relocated to Oklahoma, while some remained, forming today's recognized tribes, which have become large nations in Oklahoma and Mississippi, with the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma being the largest. They maintain rich cultures centered on faith, family, and community, as seen in their preservation of strong and unique cultural traditions, rituals, language, and governance. They are also known for their history with European contact and participation in some conflicts. Early history. Their history is linked to an ancient mound-building, agricultural-based society that flourished in the Mississippi River Valley and started in about 18,000 BC. The Choctaw migrated to that region from the west at an earlier undetermined time, but oral tradition tells they have been there for at least 12,000 years. The different creation stories suggest that the Choctaw were not one single tribe at first, with them speaking various dialects. Choctaws are closely associated with the Chickasaws, their neighbors to the north. Another Muskogean-speaking nation, they will later be part of the 5 civilized tribes, as the settlers would call them. The Choctaws were primarily farmers. Corn was their most important crop, although they also raised beans, melons, pumpkins, peas, sunflowers, and tobacco. They cleared land by girdling trees and burning the undergrowth around their cabins and surrounding vicinity. Their agricultural proficiency often led to surpluses which they sold or traded to neighboring tribes and later Europeans. Once cattle was introduced, they saved a portion of their surplus corn to feed their stock. Choctaws raised cattle with such success that they often sold excess to nations living near them. They were also hunters who hunted deer and bear. They also fished and gathered nuts and wild fruits. Society. The Choctaw society was divided into two groups called moieties, which consisted of many clans. Each clan was further divided into local groups that might consist of a group of towns or a single village. These divisions dominated Choctaw social and ceremonial life. Marriage within a moiety was forbidden. Spouses were required to belong to opposite moieties. The Choctaws, like Creeks, Cherokees, and Chickasaw tribes, are matrilineal in nature. Since they had a matrilineal kinship system, children became members of their mother's group. This means that a child's inheritance passes through the mother instead of the father, and the fathers had no authority over their children. Rather, the children were watched over by their oldest maternal uncle. In addition to the moieties, the Choctaw were divided into 3 districts. Each district was led by a principal chief called Mingo, who was elected by the men of the district. Administrative ability, proven military status, and illustrious ancestors were the 3 most prized qualities of a Mingo. The Mingo was assisted by elected captains and sub-captains, and was superior to the war chiefs. The 3 Mingos from the 3 districts would often gather at a national council meeting where issues of concern could be debated and discussed. Through this system, the Choctaws achieved an efficient and semi-democratic political system. When a child was born, a mare, a colt, a cow, a calf, a sow, and pigs were set aside for it with the provision that none of them could be sold or given away. In this way, when the child reached maturity and the stock formally became theirs, they had a good start in life. Adoption was also common. At maturity, a Choctaw boy or girl had complete freedom to choose a partner, provided the spouse was from the other moiety. Choctaw marriages lasted as long as both parties were satisfied. Separation or divorce were not taken negatively, although all children were kept by the wife. Both monogamy and polygamy were accepted. In cases of polygamy, wives were usually sisters or at least close relatives. In rare cases, wives were unrelated. The men and women had separate, distinct roles in their culture, and the women were the heads of households. Women generally performed the drudge work, laboring in the fields as they were givers of life, farming, making clothing, preparing, cooking, and storing food. Women tanned the hides of animals, such as deer, to make clothes for themselves and their family members. They also used fabric made from such things as buffalo wool and milkweed. Before the white man came, they wore wraparound dresses, skirts, and blouses made of these animal skins and fabrics. With the coming of the white man, they eventually moved away from this and wore cotton clothes. Pregnant Choctaw women were deeply honored in Choctaw society, for childbirth was their most important contribution to it. When they went into labor, they would go into a secluded place where, without any assistance, their child would be born. Although husbands weren't allowed to be present anywhere near her during this time, lest harm befall him or the child, they did fast for their wives. Historically, Choctaw men held vital complementary roles focused on protection, acting as warriors to protect the community. Men were responsible for hunting to provide meat for their families and leadership. They made tools such as stone axes and hunting equipment, and they made shell jewelry. They were politicians and leaders. They handled heavy labor like clearing agricultural fields, building structures, and constructing defensive walls. Some men served as prophets, opai, or doctors, or medicine men, elite. As part of a matrilineal society, men, specifically uncles, held significant responsibility for educating and disciplining their sisters' children. Two-spirit Choctaw individuals hold a sacred fluid gender identity historically recognized for bridging male and female roles as healers or leaders. Known in Choctaw as Hatu Iklona, males presented as women or male assigned, or Hatu Kolba, females presenting as men or female assigned. These individuals represent a blend of feminine and masculine spirits. Historically, these individuals were considered sacred, often acting as mediators or taking on specialized roles. Some 18th century reports noted gender variant behavior, though European accounts sometimes viewed them with contempt. Today, Two-Spirit Choctaw reclaim these roles, navigating contemporary LGBTQ+ identities while honoring traditional, non-binary, or multi-gendered spiritual roles. Modern Two-Spirit Choctaw, such as those in the Cousins organization, were founded by Two-Spirit Choctaw to provide safe spaces for queer Indigenous youth and focus on community and cultural safety. Choctaw homes were constructed of wooden posts connected with lianas and covered with mud. The roofs were made from cypress or pine bark, and a hole was left in each gable end of the structure to allow smoke from the internal fire to escape. By the 1800s, these structures had been largely replaced by log cabins. Choctaws rarely carried out offensive campaigns unless in retaliation when attacked, in which they would fight bravely. Stealth and cunning were primary factors in Choctaw war tactics. Choctaw men and women grew their hair long, and the men, like most other natives, removed their beards. They also flattened the heads of infants with a piece of wood, which caused them to have flat frontal skulls. Their dress was unique traditional dress, often featuring diamond patterns representing the rattlesnake, similar to that of other southeastern natives. Men wore deerskin breech clouts with a skin shirt and leggings in wintertime, and women wore deerskin skirts and a shawl of skin-woven feathers or the inner bark of a mulberry tree. The Mississippian ancestors of the Choctaw were known for building large earth and platform mounds, and often other shaped mounds as well. The Choctaw's mother mound is Nani Waya, a great earthwork platform mound located in central East Mississippi. The Nani Waya and a cave nearby are sacred for the Choctaw. Both represent a significant place in Choctaw origin stories, not only theirs, but about surrounding nations also. Early beliefs centered on the sun, Hashtuhahi, and the Great Spirit, with numerous supernatural figures like Bopoli, forest dwellers, and Nalusa Chito, soul eater. Sports have always played an important role in Choctaw culture. Stickball, or the little brother of war, is a traditional team sport still played today. Historically, stickball was often used to settle rivalries and disputes between different groups and families. On the other hand, it also created friendly competition amongst different clans and groups. Tribal government. Today, the Choctaw tribal government operates under the auspices of the tribe's constitution. Ratified in 1945, the Constitution authorized the tribe's separation from the state of Mississippi. The Choctaw tribal government consists of two branches and a tribal court system. The executive branch is led by the tribe chief and his administration. The legislative branch is made up of a 17-member tribal council. The legislatively established judicial system is comprised of 5 lower courts and a Supreme Court. The goal of the tribal government has been to take greater control of its own affairs and rely less on the federal government to care for the needs of the Choctaw people. European contact. The first recorded Choctaw contact with Europeans was in 1540 when members of Hernando de Soto's expedition arrived. The Spaniards encountered Tuscaloosa, a Choctaw Mingo from whom they demanded servants, canoes, and women. Tuscaloosa supplied carriers and rafts, but delayed delivering women until De Soto and his army reached the town of Mabila. Upon reaching the town, Tuscaloosa, who had been a hostage, escaped and refused to grant any further concessions. A bloody battle ensued in which the town was burned. There were many losses on both sides, numbering in the hundreds, maybe even thousands. Tuscaloosa died in the battle. The Spaniards, recovering from battle, remained in the area for another month and then moved away. Scattered contacts with Europeans occurred in the following years, but it took over 150 years to make significant contacts again. Alliance with the French. French explorer Pierre Le Moyne d'Iberville in 1699 established contacts with the Choctaw. The two sides became allies, with the Choctaw supporting the French with both food and in wars against the English and other natives who supported the English, such as the Chickasaw. The Choctaw allied with the French, primarily to defend against slave raids from other native tribes allied to English colonists, such as the Chickasaw. Before Europeans arrived, natives from these parts were taken captives in warfare. The captives would then either be enslaved or adopted by a family. In the 1700s, the French and Choctaw combined forces and decimated the Natchez tribe, inflicting heavy losses and forcing them to flee their homelands and join other tribes. As the fur trade was in its heights, the French and the English waged wars in this period. The Choctaw assisted the French in a campaign against the Chickasaw, now called the Chickasaw Wars. The goal was to stop the Chickasaw trading with the English. They didn't manage to defeat them, however, fighting with them continued. Trade with Britain. At the time, Choctaw people numbered around 12,000. A civil war started in 1747 between two Choctaw districts when one district wanted to start trading with the English. They were organized in three districts: the Eastern, who was pro-French, the Western, who were pro-English, and the Southern, that were neutral. As a result, hundreds of Choctaw died in the war, and the pro-French Eastern group maintained their influence. After being defeated by Great Britain in the 7 Years' War, France ceded its territory east of the Mississippi River to Britain. From 1763 to 1781, Britain was the main European trade partner for the Choctaw. American Revolution. In 1766, Spanish forces were based in New Orleans after they took over French territory west of the Mississippi. The Western Choctaw sometimes traded with them in that area. During the American Revolution, more than 1,000 Choctaw fought for the British, largely against Spain. On the other hand, a large number of Choctaw fought on the Spanish side. There were also a great number of them who fought for the United States. After the war, George Washington initiated a program to integrate Southeastern Native Americans into European American culture. Many Choctaw had already intermarried, converted to Christianity, and adopted other European customs. Also, some Choctaw owned African American slaves at the time. War of 1812. In early 1811, the Shawnee leader Tecumseh gathered native tribes in an alliance along with the British to try to expel Americans from the Northwest area, south of the Great Lakes, and generally north of the Ohio River. The Choctaw declined his invitation and sided with the United States when the war began. Chief Pushmataha raised a company of 125 Choctaw warriors in Choctaw territory. He joined General Ferdinand Claiborne in mid-November, and some 125 Choctaw warriors took part in an attack on Creek forces at the Battle of Holy Ground on the 23rd December in 1813. After this victory, the Choctaw began to volunteer in greater numbers. By February 1814, Pushmataha commanded a larger Choctaw force and joined General Andrew Jackson's units to attack Creek territory in Florida. After the final defeat of the Creek at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend in 1814, many Choctaw left. In the Battle of New Orleans, the Choctaw harassed the British right rear. They came unexpectedly out of the swamp and delivered destructive fire at short range without themselves breaking cover. They patrolled the edge of the swamp, leaping unperceived from one log to another, and shot every redcoat who came within range. At least 50 British soldiers were killed and many more severely wounded by this method. Trail of Tears. Between 1801 and 1830, the Choctaw signed a series of treaties with the United States, one of which, the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek, ceded almost all of their Mississippi lands in exchange for territory in Oklahoma. During the Indian removal period, President Andrew Jackson made the Choctaw exile a model of Indian removal. In 1831, nearly 17,000 Choctaw became the first Native Americans to walk the infamous Trail of Tears to Indian Territory, modern Oklahoma. Nearly 2,500 died along the way from disease and exposure. The last treaty, however, also provided that Choctaw members could choose to stay in Mississippi and become American citizens, subject to the laws of the country and the state. Approximately 6,000 chose to remain but suffered legal conflict, harassment, and intimidation at the hands of the American settlers. Potato famine. After the Trail of Tears in 1847, despite their own recent suffering, Choctaw people heard about the Irish struggle with the potato famine and had made a donation of $170, over $5,000 in today's money, and sent it to help the Irish. This bond is commemorated today by the Kindred Spirits sculpture in Middleton, Ireland. Civil War. During the Civil War, the Choctaw in both Oklahoma and Mississippi mostly sided with the Confederate States. Some Choctaw identified with the Southern cause, and some owned slaves. In addition, they remembered well and resented the removals from their homeland 30 years earlier and the poor treatment they received from the federal government. Soon, Confederate battalions were formed into Indian Territory, or Oklahoma, and later in Mississippi to support the Southern cause. After the war, they were required to free their slaves and make them citizens, called Choctaw freedmen. World Wars. In World War I, the Choctaw served in the United States military as the first Native American code talkers, using their native Choctaw language as a natural code to secure military communications, predating the more famous Navajo code talkers of World War II. They also served in World War II, both as code talkers and in other branches of the military, as Native Americans have the highest volunteer rate in World War II. Choctaw population throughout history. The population of the Choctaw when they first came into relations with the French in the year 1699 was estimated from 15,000 to 20,000. Their number around the 1900s was 19,000 citizens of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma and 1,700 Mississippi Choctaw. Today they number more than 200,000, being one of the biggest Native American nations. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.